Hi, everyone, and welcome to Author's Corner and also the Neil Haley Show. We're broadcasting live from Bethel Park Studios in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Check me out on Twitter at Total Tutor, Neil S. Haley, Facebook, LinkedIn, Neil Haley, Instagram, Total Tutor, Pinterest, Neil Haley, Google Plus, and also on Periscope at Total Tutor. And for our live audience right now, March Madness is in full swing. And my good friend Travis Miller said, you have to get this author on the program. I have some stories of Indiana basketball as well, so I'm excited to welcome to the program the co-author of Missing Banners, Tom Brew. Tom, thanks for calling, and how are you?
It's my pleasure. I'm doing great, thanks. Fighting off a little cold, so hopefully the voice doesn't sound too bad.
No, it sounds fine, Tom. And March Madness is probably your favorite time of the year, isn't it?
It absolutely is. I just love this time of year, and especially in a year when Indiana basketball is relevant again. It's on the edge of my seat all day yesterday, looking forward to the first game, and of course, absolutely can't wait now for a big Saturday showdown with Kentucky, a team I just absolutely love to hate.
Oh, I know. If you get that win, Indiana's back, especially with Tom Crean. I'm still not sold on him. I think you guys are never sold on an Indiana coach if it's not Bobby Knight, right?
Well, I'm not the biggest Bobby Knight fan in the world, so I have sort of preached for 16 years that I would hope that Indiana fans would get on with their lives a little bit. But I have great respect for Bob Knight as coach. He won 3 national championships for us, and he's a great coach. But he's not my favorite person in the world. But that was a long time ago, and I think too many Indiana fans just live in the past and don't give anybody a chance. I won't say I'm 100% a Tom Crean fan either, but considering what he had to take over 8 years ago when Sheldon Sampson basically ran his program into the ground and basically started over with literally no players. I mean, to be relevant again within 4 years, and then to be good again this year and Big Ten champs for the second time in 4 years, that's not a bad thing. And I certainly will always disagree with some of his game time decisions and things like that. But the way I look at it as an Indiana guy, he's my coach, and I'll do whatever I can to support him as long as he's my coach.
One thing I wanted to bring up, Tom, and that thought process is I remember Tom at Marquette, okay, and in the Big East doing some stuff to Pitt and he seemed better game time decisions when he was with Marquette. I think he's waiting to get the players he needs in there. Think about it. He coached Dwayne Wade. He's had some really phenomenal players at Marquette that I think he's just getting his team together and his kind of players to make that run, which could be possibly this year or next year. Do you think that's the case? That's right where you're waiting for that maybe then the game time decisions will be better once he has his right players playing?
Well, I think there's certainly some truth to that. College basketball, especially, I've always been a big believer that you could be the greatest coach in the world, but you have to have it's still a player's game. And coaches can make a little bit of difference, but they can't make enough to overcome huge talent gap levels. And I think that was certainly a problem the last couple of years where they just they didn't have as much talent on the floor that they needed to compete with the best in the country. I think he's probably done more with less this year than at any time he's ever been in Indiana, because it's he's had to rely on a lot of young kids to come up and help, plus rely on some graduate transfers, and Max Bielfeldt coming from Michigan was huge. So I think this year he was able to he had the type of players that he likes to play with. And enough versatility to have really for the first time since the 2013 team enough depth at every position to be okay. And this year they've been able to handle losing a player or two here or there because they've had someone to be able to step in, and that hasn't always been the case during his time there. But it was also the last 7 years of Bob Knight's era were sort of the same thing. That there was a talent level had dropped a little bit, and then when an injury or two came in, there wasn't nearly enough talent to compete. And but this year, I think all the pieces are in place. But with that being said, for Indiana to make a long run this year, they are certainly going to be the underdog. on Saturday to Kentucky. I think they're a 3-point
Yeah.
underdog going into that game. If they win, they'll be an underdog to North Carolina. And if they win that one, they would probably be an underdog to Xavier. And if they got to the Final Four, they would be an underdog to Michigan State or Kansas. So they've got a lot of work ahead of them. They certainly didn't. They didn't get much of a break from the selection committee. It's Buck Green's line and selection Sunday night was exactly right. That he was glad he brought the Big Ten trophy down to the meeting because it looked like everybody else forgot the fact that they won the Big Ten this year. I can't remember in my lifetime a Big Ten regular season champion being a 5 seed ever.
Oh, wow. So let's hope for your case we don't talk about missing banners. So your book, you co-authored this book, Tom. Why missing banners? What was the reason to kind of bring up this whole,
Sure. I mean, it's like a lot of good ideas for stories to write about or books to write about. It sort of became, a barstool discussion one night. Indiana has the 5 national championship banners that hang proudly in Assembly Hall, and a bunch of us just got to talking one night about which year should have been the 6th year that Indiana could have won a title and didn't. And the more we talked about it, the more it was amazing how everybody had different perspectives of certain years that it could have been. So we sort of locked in to play off the 5 banners that hang there. And the cover of the book is a beautifully photoshopped photo of the 5 years we chose to write about. 1975, the year Scott May broke his arm. 1980, Mike Woodson and his sore back. And 1993, Alan Henderson and his torn ACL. And the 2002 team, of course, that played in the championship game. And then the 2013 team of Cody and Victor Oladipo and all those guys. And then, we go into great detail, kind of reliving those 5 seasons, talking to players, coaches, opponents, media people. And it's not just rehashing play-by-play of the game. It's just a lot of great interviews with all those people, just really telling some great stories of those seasons and what might have been. And of course, we touch on lots of other years as well at the back of the book. And then my partner, Terry Hutchins, who we used to work together at the Indianapolis Star for many years, Terry got a lot of great research, too, on just how all the banners came about in Assembly Hall. So lots of really great reads in that story. And it came out in early December, right when the season started, and it's really done well. The IU fan base, they love their basketball. And, they love reminiscing about the great times that have gone by.
Let's go 2002. I'm interested in talking a little bit about 2002. That they went to the national championship game and lost to who? Remind me some of the things that I might remember. 93 and 2002.
2002 they lost to Maryland in the national championship game. Juan Dixon was the star of that Maryland team, and Indiana was, ironically, a 5 seed that year too, and they hadn't had the greatest of regular seasons. They finished 4th in the Big Ten, and they were that was the group of guys who had to try to make a decision when Bob Knight got fired, a year and a half earlier, as to whether they were going to stick around or not. And they chose to, and this was Mike Davis's second year as the head coach of Indiana, and then they just happened to get hot at the end of the year, and May got a tournament run going, played really well the first week of the tournament, and then in the regional semifinals they played a number 1 Duke team that was led by Jay Williams that was really good, and Indiana beat them, and it was a lot of Indiana fans, especially the people who kind of lived through that time. They still consider that their all-time favorite games because that Duke team was, they were number 1 in the country, I think all but 3 weeks that entire year. They were that good. And, we beat them. And, of course, won the next game to go to the Final Four and got to the championship game. And and then, sadly, late in the championship game, it was they had played 5 great games in a row, and then the 6th game they just couldn't make a basket to save their lives and just didn't play well and got beat.
Right.
But, there are a lot of Indiana fans that kind of always looked at that. It's like it was almost too bad they made a run because the Mike Davis haters, they didn't think he belonged to being the Indiana coach. And of course, as soon as they made it all in the championship game, there was no getting away from him being around for a while. But it was great in the kids telling stories, players from that year telling stories about how much great respect they had for Mike Davis, and and that's changed over the course of time, and I think it's changed with the fans as well.
Let's go to some of the players that played in 2002. I want to go to 93 and 2002 because I'm not going to remember 75 or 80. And 2013, I've become too busy. So those are the ones I want to kind of discuss in our show. And again, you got to pick up the book Missing Banners, co-author Tom Brew. We have on the show. What players are notable players in 2002 from the 2002 Indiana Hoosiers?
Jared Jeffries was the best player on that team. He was a freshman from Bloomington. Was a state championship winner in high school, Mr. Basketball, and probably the best player to come out of Bloomington in a long, long time. And he, of course, always wanted to play for Bob Knight and committed to Indiana while Coach Knight was still there. And,
yeah.
Of course, Coach got fired, and they never played for him. But he was the best player on that team. But they had a lot of other guys who really filled roles really well. Kyle Hornsby, Tom Coverdale really played well. A.J. Moye was a tough kid from Atlanta that really brought a lot of heart and soul to that team. And of course, Dane Fife, who's an assistant coach at Michigan State now, was a big part of that team as well, and the sort of the leader of that team. And it was definitely one of those teams that was the whole was better than the individual parts. And when they were on, they were tough to beat, and boy, they could guard people. And really a good group of guys that especially with that tournament run, became a group that really became some all-time favorites for Indiana fans.
How was it going back and talking to some of the guys from those teams? Was that pretty cool? Especially even though you covered it and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it was tremendous. It was Terry and I have known each other for years, and Terry has covered Indiana basketball for the last 20 years. So a lot of the 2002 and 2013 guys he knows really well from all his time there. And of course, my time in Indiana spanned the older years. So all the guys from 75 and 80, the Scott Mays and Quinn Buckner, and John Laskowski's of the world, and Mike Woodson, and those guys. Those are all the guys I covered and known for going on 40 years now. That's how old I am. So it was really great for me. That's how we broke it up. And of course, I did the '93 stuff too, and Terry helped out a little bit here and there with that. But it was great to kind of reconnect with a lot of these guys. Just to sit down again and have my interview with Quinn Buckner for this book was like 2.5 hours long.
Oh wow.
He told all sorts of great stories, and same with John Laskowski and Scott May was tremendous. It was great catching up with all those guys, and I've seen them since the book's been out, and making sure they got their copies, and they've had a few players come to some alumni association events with us where we've been selling the books and everything, and it's great to catch up with a lot of those guys that I hadn't seen in a long, long time. It was really a lot of fun to do. All
right, Tom, when we get back, we're going to talk more. Talk a little bit about what makes you an expert to write this book, meaning what you've done in your history of Indiana basketball, and then go to, I guess, the most notable people that you were able to interview. Just to tell you my little quick story, I've been lucky enough to go back to my childhood favorites at the University of Pittsburgh in '89 and interviewed Jarrell Porter, Sean Miller, Jason Matthews in the last couple of months. And it's just like a kid in the candy store, because that's when I was a kid. I was just a huge Pitt fan. And luckily somebody who's been able to connect me with all those. So I understand getting to go back and talk to those guys, remembering and reminiscing about those times. You're watching The Neil Haley Show and listening to Author's Corner. When we get back, more Tom Brew. We'll be back in just a moment.
Back in 2011, I had a conversation with some friends about sports that piqued my interest in how could we start a sports talk show on TV. We started out with one show every week, and we managed to parlay that into 2 shows. One, we're allowed to venture out into a local bar, and we interview people, so it's a different type format. We actually have interviewed over 250 people since 2013. And we've been doing this almost 3 years in the Bethel Park area. And it's just so fantastic to be able to talk sports, because I have that passion for it, 2 times a week. If you are passionate about something that you would like to share with the community, I encourage you to come to BPTV and produce a show like I do. I'm Al Levine, volunteer producer of Pittsburgh Sportsline on BPTV.
We're back to the Neil Haley Show. You can check me out on Twitter at Total Tutor, Neil S. Haley Facebook, LinkedIn Neil Haley, Instagram Total Tutor, Pinterest Neil Haley, Google Plus, and also on Periscope at Total Tutor. And when I think about specifically when my website's up, hopefully the next TV taping, my website will be up at neilhaley.com, where all the radio and television will be housed, and my social media and branding company. And then TotalTutor.net is not gone. TotalTutor.org is not gone. It's just my education side. I've separated the two. And I'm with Tom Brewer, author of Missing Banners. And Tom, that's the kind of thing when you remember the memories and then get to ask those questions and say, wow, I remember watching this as a kid. Or wow, I remember covering this. That's the cool thing about writing these books, isn't it?
It absolutely is. I've had a long newspaper career, and been able to go to a lot of games and see a lot of things. But to me, the most important thing always about that job has always been the people that you were around. And I've had a chance to meet a lot of great coaches and a lot of great players, and some that really good people and some not so much. But it's always been about the people to me, and that's to do projects like this was great. I think we wound up interviewing almost 100 people by the time it was all.
Oh my gosh!
So
wow.
It was nice to sit down and talk, either on the phone or in person with all those people to remember those kind of things. And that to me is what makes college athletics. I'm a big college football guy too. It's like that's what makes those sports so great, is that those bonds that run year after year through programs. Where people people in 2016 don't mind sitting down and talking about a game that took place 40 years ago, or a game that took place 30 years ago, or a bad call by a referee 25 years ago. It's like it just never goes away.
They're the rock stars of those fans. Yeah.
Yep.
It doesn't matter if they ever even made the NBA. It doesn't matter if they went to the NFL. As long as they did it for your team, they will always be a memory. It's very interesting. I was able to interview Dwight Clay about the shot with Notre Dame and beating UCLA and ending that streak. And that just was so amazing because, I mean, he never went on to the NBA or anything, but what a memory. So that's what's so great about college sports. And Tom, we see it already. Some of these kids will be remembered forever in the college history books and everything. Now, you talked about the interviews and stuff. Who were the most notable guys? You talked about sitting down with Quinn Buckner. And so he won a national championship, right? Just the year that one of the years he didn't, that you thought he should have, right?
Yes, he did. Yeah. Quinn was the starting point guard in 1975 and 1976 both. Well, 74 even as well. 76, that was the last undefeated team in college basketball. They went 32-0 and won the 1976 national championship.
Okay.
We spent a lot of time talking about the year before, 1975. They were undefeated that year as well. And then very late in the season, Scott May, who was the National Player of the Year, had a game at Purdue, took a bad spill and wound up breaking his arm, and missed the last handful of regular season games. And then when the tournament started, missed the games as well. He tried to play in the regional finals against Kentucky, but was only able to go a few minutes. Those guys, they were all great. Because what they did left a legacy that hasn't been done in 40 years of going undefeated. They had a chance of going, or really good chance of going undefeated 2 years in a row. And there was just a lot of great things that happened in that 1975 season, and including someone like me who's been around the program for 40 years. Some of these guys told stories I had never heard before.
Oh, wow.
Just really great stuff from a lot of them.
What coaches did you reach out to for those teams to get interviews with? Did you get any of the interviews with any of the coaches?
Well, the most obvious question is asking, so we talked about Knight, and the answer to that is no. But we did reach out and try. He doesn't talk to anybody right now, but that was okay. We a lot of what we got from a perspective standpoint, the players were great, and then for every year there was look from somewhere else. Like for 1975, I talked to a guy named Mike Flynn, who was from Jeffersonville, Indiana. He was a senior starting point guard on the University of Kentucky team that beat Indiana.
Oh, wow.
And he gave us great perspective about what was going on at Kentucky that whole year, and and what it meant to them to beat Indiana in the tournament. He was great. Then in 1980, Indiana lost to Purdue in the NCAA tournament. It was the only time they've ever played in the NCAA tournament.
Oh, my.
And Lee Rose was the coach at Purdue for those 2 years, and he took that Purdue team to the Final Four in 1980, and that's the last time Purdue's ever been there. And Lee Rose was great, in talking about that Indiana Purdue rivalry back in those days, telling stories. And like I said, I lived through that year. It was my senior year in college, and I've done hundreds of interviews with all those players and coaches through the years, and Lee Rose told me stories I'd never heard before.
Oh, my.
They're all in the book, and he was just tremendous, and he's still one of my all-time favorite guys too. Because my first job out of college was at the St. Petersburg Times down in Florida, and Coach Rose left Purdue to come to the University of South Florida right after that. So I spent a lot of time with him down there as well, and we had a lot of conversations about Indiana and Purdue basketball, both on and off the record, for many years. So to sit down and interview with him again, that was great. And he just told some tremendous stories about him and Coach Knight. Were just off the charts great stories.
Definitely, and that's the interesting thing. You can get a perspective from somebody else about a story and how that team gelled or lost that big game. The players are willing to share this many years later, and that's in the book, right? Some of the things that maybe
Absolutely.
you didn't want to know what happened, the play or certain things of a loss, or why didn't you win the championship? And it still sticks to some of these guys today, right? The losses, right? Wishing they had that championship.
It absolutely does. One of my favorite stories that's in the book came A.J. Moye, who played on the 2002 team. He was sort of the glue guy on that team. He was just a really tough defender and just a real vocal guy and sort of a clown in the locker room. Always had a funny quote for the media, this and that. But he, whenever Indiana needed some toughness or needed a basket, he was the guy who delivered. And
right.
But in the national championship game, he only played 7 minutes. And, he was angry about it that day it happened. And he's still to this day, 14 years later, very upset about the fact that he didn't get a chance to play more in the national championship game. He was, when he just even got animated during his interview and he was talking about it. It's like, you could just tell that his voice got louder, and you could tell the anger in his voice. That even 14 years later, he can't put it down. Because especially for him, because that national championship game that year was in Atlanta, which was his hometown. Had hundreds of family members and friends there, and like I said, he only got to play 7 minutes and didn't get a chance to put his impact on the game where it might have made a difference as to whether or not they won or lost. So he still holds that grudge 14 years later.
My. So those stories are definitely among you, and I think that when you interview the older players, especially because you were at college at that time, they're the greatest memories for you, right, of Indiana basketball at that time when you were going to school. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Now, this is especially for me. Indiana won national titles in 1976 and 1981, and my 4 years in Bloomington were the 4 years in between. So I had just, as far as being on campus, I had literally just missed both of them while I was there. But as an Indiana kid growing up, so obviously my senior year in high school, I played on an undefeated high school basketball team that year as well as part of that team. So that was a fun year, and then of course I was working professionally in '81 and writing a lot of college basketball stuff when they won, but I wasn't there. But I wrote a lot about all those guys later in life when they were going through their NBA careers and this and that. So I've always had that chance to keep in touch with all those guys, and that part of it was great. So what was the most notable? Was it Quinn Buckner you spoke to, or who else did you speak to? That was. Yeah, well, Scott May was National Player of the Year, and his NBA career was cut short by injuries, but he was the National Player of the Year in 1976. He was a great player. Quinn, of course, played in the NBA for many years, and he was on there. A lot of the '93 guys, Damon Bailey, of course, is an Indiana legend, and he's a great interview in the book. And Alan Henderson played for a long time. Randy Whitman played for a long time. There's just a whole bunch of guys, from all those years. And then, of course, Terry talked to the 2013 guys, and they're all, that whole great group for the 2013 guys, they were really good, especially Jordan Holes was a great interview. And that's what's nice, too, is it covers, like, the kind of the years that we focus on really are like one a decade for 5 whole decades. So there's certainly something there for every basketball fan.
All right, Tom, really great catching up with you. Really enjoyed our conversation. And best place we can find information on you and learn more about you, where can we find the book and things about you?
Well, the easiest way to buy the book is through Amazon.com. If you just type in Tom Brew books, all the books that I've done just pop right up there, including Missing Banners. And the last name, of course, is Brew, like a beer, B-R-E-W. That's the easiest way to do it. If you want an autographed copy of the book, the easiest way to do that is just to drop me an email at tombrewsports@gmail.com and drop me a note with your address on it, and I'll mail out an autographed copy as well, and we can take it from there. And there's also a website, missingbanners.com, that's a little work in progress right now with all the information right there, so I can order the books as well.
So you've written a few Indiana books. How many other books have you written, Tom?
I have. The first book I did is actually a novel, a work of fiction. It's called The Ties That Bind. It deals with, even though it's fiction, it deals with a couple of college athletes, including one who's an Indiana basketball player. But that story deals a lot more with gambling addiction of college athletes and how far you go to help a friend who's in trouble.
Okay.
And that's done really well, too. And that book is that's also available on Amazon. Like I said, when you search for Tom Brew books, they both pop right up, and that's been very well received, and did really well for me too. It's a great story, and there's a sequel to that coming out. It's started my own publishing company. Missing Banners was the first book that came out there, and I have a third book that's being released this week. It's a novel that's based in Indiana called Stack's Case. It's a story of a corrupt cop and a private investor.
Oh wow, okay.
I've got 3 more titles coming out later this year, so it's going to be a busy time.
Staying busy. We'll have to stay in touch, Tom, and see how you're utilizing social media to get the message of the book out. So good talking to you, Tom, and best of luck.
You sure do.
See you later. Okay. Bye-bye.
Follow me on Facebook and Twitter as well at Tom Brew Sports.
Awesome. All right, take care, Tom. Okay. You're watching The Neil Haley Show. Enjoyed the conversation. You can check me out on Twitter, Twitter, Neil S. Haley, Facebook. Take care, guys, and we'll be see you next week and enjoy the show. Take care.